You know, one of the biggest mistakes often people make is quite obvious, and it's very impactful when you retire early and you're not really prepared for it. I've talked about this before and how I prepared and how I'm enjoying my early retirement. At 53, I was thrust into retirement, but I came across this article in Business Insider, which spoke about a particular boomer who actually, she had a lifelong career, grew up in a household of motivated career people. I believe they had a lawyer for a father, and they basically upper middle class meant that they had a little bit of perspective on what it meant to save, work hard, advance through her career. And she ended up with multiple promotions and wound up being a manager in a particular role. Unfortunately, after years of that, working 40, 50, 60, sometimes more hours a week, she found herself earning, generating, putting money away, saving hard, pay off the house, put money into 401ks, and even those investments in the 401 meant that she had $500,000 available for retirement. Of course, Social Security at 62 or 65, those other add-ons meant that she had $3,000 plus per month coming in with a paid off house. But see, that's part of the issue, and a lot of people get stuck in that conundrum. And often I speak of this myself. I too as well found that a big shift, you start to wonder, where did everybody go? Where did all your friends go? See, that was part of the problem. So this boomer, she retired in her late 50s, realized, by the time she was in her mid 60s, this was a mistake for that particular individual. And it can be for a lot of people that decide they want to retire early. You see, because they're quite not prepared. Often they might be prepared financially. They may not be prepared, from the social aspect. They may not have things to go to, some tasks. They may not have other things they enjoy doing that gets them up out of bed every morning. And see, quite often that is the problem. We speak of this all the time. And this individual, after a few years, I think it was around 7 or 8 years, realized it was time to go back to work. Why? Well, there's a few key reasons. I mean, one of them, it sounded like when she was interviewed, a lot of it came down to the fact that she lost her social network, the group of people that she was involved with, people that you were hanging around. People go to work, you walk in the office in the morning, you have those chats, you say hi, good morning, and all of those things are the very things that some people look forward to on a Sunday night, getting ready, for their day to work on Monday morning. They often miss those days, getting up in the morning, racing down, fighting through traffic, and having those conversations with those people as they blow into the office first thing Monday morning. But for me, I personally found that wasn't a big win. I did enjoy those days at certain times, but that quickly grew old when in fact you wind up with a manager or some other people in your market, in your workplace that aren't necessarily the best people for your own best interests. Some of them are toxic. So at some point in your life, in your career, in your corporate world, you may actually enjoy that. But that does come and go with time. And you know what? I realize that myself personally. So some people, like this boomer, realized that she was kind of missing that. Oh, what's that? Do you hear that? Ooh, kind of spooky out here actually, but let's keep going. Okay, so, and before I continue on the story, part of the reason and one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of people do tend to make when they retire early, and I want to dive bomb into that. But as we roll into 2025, I do want to extend a welcome back to everybody. I know I've taken a little bit of a 2-week hiatus here. Just before Christmas, I posted my last video, and I do apologize for not posting a little more frequently. But you know what? It was some great, well-deserved time. It's been a busy year, with a lot of loss in my world, a lot of loss in the family, job, you name it. A lot of you know what's been going on. Lost my mother earlier this year, lost a job earlier this year, had to dealing with the estate stuff, not to mention, just an overall shift in lifestyle meant that this has been one hectic year. And it really did feel like I needed some time away, some time just to wind down. And I'm glad to be back in the saddle, but I did need some time to sort of refresh and sort of recalibrate and reset my, everything. But I do welcome each and every one of you. So it's great to have you back. And obviously, as you can tell, I like to get out of the city, and here we are. I'm walking out in the country. We do have this great little spot that we get away. Sometimes it's out west of the city, about an hour west. We're out in the bush here. And quite honestly, anything at any point, this place kind of freaks me out. We got a dog here with us that kind of trails me around, but this is one of those scenarios here where you don't know what might pop out. Coyotes, wolves, bears, we have all of that here. And it's quite, but it makes it for an interesting experience on any given day. But actually, you know what? Right there, some tracks. I mean, look what we have right there. See the claws right there? Quite interesting. Yes, you never know what you're going to find around here. But back to the story and what happens when you retire too early and you're not really ready for it. So in this case, the boomer decided she was actually ready to retire. So again, getting into retirement, had the 401k, had all that money in the savings, and was making and drawing $3,000+ a month, had everything she needed to do to continue a long and illustrious retirement. But there was this fear of, the idea that like a lot of people have when they retire. Are they going to run out of money? What if there's a medical condition, a diagnosis or something that's all of a sudden going to take everything financially from you? What if all of a sudden, inflation hits? What if something comes up, your car blows up and you need something new? There's a lot of unknowns and a lot of people are fearful of that. A lot of people also plan for the average 75, 80 years of age. What if you're one of those that makes it to 95? I mean, look at Clint Eastwood. I think he's 94 right now. So a lot of people are fearful that they might run out of money. A lot of people are fearful of the unexpected. And a lot of people just want that social network and market, the group of people around them just to make them feel kind of special and important, like they need to have a reason to get to work. But you see, one of the biggest mistakes that I found is not having a goal, not having a place to go to, not having something to drive you and get you out of the bed in the morning. You see, the financial aspect is always part of it, and you can plan for that. And it sounded like, I'm not here to be a judge because everybody knows their own finances, and I'm certainly not a financial advisor, but I will say that it sounded as though she had all of her things in place. All of her things, she was making the money, she put the money away, and had everything more or less paid off. But see, one of the biggest mistakes people make when they're in retirement, other than not having something to do or, something to look forward to, is making a big financial move. And from what I understand, from what I heard in the storyline, is that she decided to pitch that house, buy a property that was much closer to the coast in California, realized, I want a beachfront house. I want something that's nice, fresh. But then unfortunately, that's a big financial move because that took, I think it was over $100,000 of her 401k, not to mention another pile of money for renovations. Next thing you know, she's pretty much consumed at least half of her 401k investments on the reinvestment of this new home. See, I've said this for a long time. One of the biggest mistakes that we can make in retirement, particularly early retirement, when we anticipate having a longer time in front of us, is that we don't plan. Planning to get there is good. But then all of a sudden, as soon as you start making some big financial move, like upgrading a house, buying that really expensive car, whatever it is, as soon as you make that move, everything's out the window. You could save for 20, 30, 40 years to save up that, for that 401k, to save for that $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 in the 401ks. And next thing you know, with one drop of a hat, one big move like that, and next thing you know, it's all gone. And see, that's one of the biggest mistakes I'm finding, is not being prepared for that or not being committed. You see, it's all about the commitment. And when people aren't fully committed, that's often what can bite you. And, it sounded as though, like a lot of us, and, none of us are here to judge because we all just enjoy living life. But it sounded as though there was, expenses continued to rise. In a lot of cases, a lot of people like us, we all like to keep doing the things, living the same lifestyle, going out to eat at the fancy restaurants, eating that prime rib and the steak dinners, driving that new car, need a new Lexus SUV, or, want to buy that new house on the coast. Those are the things that if we didn't plan for it, an early retirement can be a serious detriment. You see, because if you're planning early retirement and you're in your early 50s, your mid 50s, your 60s, and you still live for another 20 years, all of a sudden you make one big move like that and you blow it all away. Well, what's left? What's left is going back to work, unfortunately. And see, this is one of the common mistakes that a lot of early retirees make, is continually spending. We do have to consider a level of frugality when we start getting into retirement, because if we continue to live the way we did when we were making major cash flow, you were working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, sometimes overtime, sometimes bonuses, Christmas bonuses. A lot of people start incorporating that into their incomes, so you start making that money, but then you start spending that money. You start realizing, wait a minute, this is all expendable cash. Sure, it's great when you've got that cash flow and you've got that next paycheck come January, you get the bonus, and then you move on to the next year and the next month and the money keeps flowing. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately, in most cases once you retire. And so once you retire, you have to start thinking about, we do have to lock down. And so part of the planning that I find is not just how am I going to do this financially? What do we have for cushion? We got to think about how much money might be required. Say there's some kind of medical situation. We might even have to start thinking about things like Medicare, or think about things that are, extra insurance. We know that, there's been enough conversation about that in the news recently that's not always a surefire approach either. But without it, we're definitely dead in the water, pardon the pun. So realistically, once we hit retirement, the last thing we want to be doing is spending like we did when we were working in our busy careers. You see, ultimately, that's what I'm finding the biggest mistake that a person can make. We ourselves have made some adjustments. Yes, I'm not eating cat food every day, but you know what? Instead of eating out, every 3-4 times a week at fast food or going out to dinner or something, often what we just do is we just make dinner at home or a little leftovers from time to time, or, we'll even do something like get one of those, at Save On Foods, we can go out and get one of those barbecue chickens and we throw together some potatoes. Next thing you know, we got 2 or 3 meals and we're good to go. And honestly, it's just a scenario that you just have to start thinking about, being a little more frugal, thinking about the things that you don't really need to have. Do you need to buy that new car? And as I've mentioned this before, if you feel like you're going to need a new car, you do that in advance. That's part of your planning. See, plan your departure, plan your exit. And that's a really big part that a lot of people seem to just sort of forget about, that they want to continue living the lifestyle, but they don't actually make the adjustments for it. You go from a place where maybe you're making, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, household between the pair of you, and all of a sudden now you're going down to $5,000 or $6,000, even though you might have a pension. It's still not enough. How do you close that gap? Well, the gap is closed by finding ways to save those costs, reduce, debt, car payments. That's a big one. Eating out. That's a big one. Mortgages, huge one. Credit card debt, huge one. Student loans, huge ones. Get rid of those big debts and you're good to go. But until that happens, more and more people will find themselves retiring early, spin their wheels for, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, and them having to go back to work. And unfortunately, in the story I read unfortunately, the story really that I came across was there was just this whole idea of competition now. Because now going back to work in your mid-60s, you're now competing with people that are in their 30s and 40s. And now how do you do that? You've got to try to dress younger, feel younger, look younger. You've got to compete now. So now you've got to do all those things to be competitive again. Well, you spent the last 35, 40 years of your life doing that, and now you're trying to jump back in. So it just creates all these extra challenges and concerns. So ultimately, that's just the bottom line. You got to think about, how are you going to make this happen? And on top of it, you always have to have a plan, something you enjoy doing, a passion, is something that drives you and gets you out of bed in the morning. Ultimately, without that, you're definitely going to have a tough time in early retirement. Well, again, as always, thanks everybody. I just wanted to drop this bomb here, this quick video, because I want to let you know I'm back in. And thanks again. Hope you all had a wonderful new year. 2025 is going to be a very, very busy year. Bye-bye.